In this video, I want to talk about something a little bit different, and that is the mental structure somehow that is necessary in order for us to see this. It seems kind of bizarre, and I'm still working on trying to figure things out, honestly. But I had a comment from somebody that's been watching some videos recently that just, it got my attention. There's a point where I'm moving along and I realize I'm stepping into territory and understanding stuff with the material that I can use certain terms to describe what I'm doing and what I'm seeing. And as I talk to other people and they're not using or describing those same terms, I know that they're not seeing what I am. This guy said something that's like, okay, I recognize something there that I want to talk about. And this has to do with modern gaming platforms. How bizarre. My name is Dan Paulson. Let's see what that's about. The first thing I'm going to do is read his comment, and this is posted on a video of mine that is called Genesis Was Control for an Ancient Population. That's not a clickbait title. Of course, it's much more than that. There's only so much room you can put in there, but I try to add what is new and interesting. Okay, the comment. I'm so glad I found your channel. So many interesting videos. All right, thank you. Yes, it's been a work in progress, actually. If you go through the earliest videos till now, you'll see that I'm learning and figuring it out as I go along. And the YouTube videos have been my outlet because I don't have anybody to converse with. It's such an unusual thing. I think you have to reach out and try to find people wherever they are. It takes a lot of things. If you're interested in this, you realize how much it takes and how infrequently we're going to find people that have interest in this. So many interesting videos. Yeah, I'm glad you think so. They actually are long and sometimes repetitive as I'm going through this. I'm wiring my brain. If you started in the beginning till now, you'd see a structure that's kind of like emerging in the background as I'm figuring this out. Then you said, everywhere I look, I see arcs and templates. That's it. Yeah, arcs and templates. You see them, and I want to talk about why that might be. Were arcs used by the controlling classes to protect their society? Undoubtedly. I'm with you on that. I agree. I'm sure that the people who don't see the templates and can only comprehend the arc, then you put in parentheses, pearls before swine, are still experiencing the template on a subliminal level. The interpretation speaks to them even if they don't fully understand. And yeah, okay, let's talk about that. I agree with your comments, but you said something about seeing the arcs and the templates. And if you have watched a couple of my videos, and that's enough for you to go, okay, I see that, then you've got something already in place. It took me a long time to wire to see this. A long time, gradually pulling and working at it. But I think that there's something I want to talk about that has to do with mental architecture. And let me just get started and see where this emerges from. This is the first time I've tried out this metaphor and these analogs, but I want to see if it seems like it fits. I was interested enough to go click on your channel to see if you had videos up or anything like that, and it looks like you're a gamer, and I'm like, oh, that tells me something perhaps. This is what I want to say. I've never been a big-time gamer. Long ago, I played some arcade games. I've always been outdoor doing this other kind of geek stuff. So I'm not a gamer, but what I remember back then on the arcade kind of games and stuff like that, what I thought at first, oh, this is pretty cool. You know, you just sit here and play it and these things are shooting. Then you play a different game and it doesn't take long after playing a few games to realize something in the background is the same. It looks different on the surface, but ultimately whatever programs are running in the background are going to create the same thing, even if it looks different. You know, it might be fighter jets. It might be, alien ships. It might be some kind of creature spitting fire or whatever, but and then patterned a little bit differently. But you begin to realize, wow, there's something, there's just a few variations here, but there's something consistent in the background. And as simple as that sounds, and it is an incredibly oversimplified description of what I think I see here, but I believe that there's something similar to that going on. That is what is happening here. There's a structure that all the stories are built on. However, the stories are bizarre enough in their analogous verbiage, and we're far enough away from them that we begin to lose touch with it. We still see the patterns, we still see templates, but we have to figure them out. Or we don't have to. I have. There was something about that I became obsessed about. Who are we? Can we figure it out? I've done outreaches, and I realize in the world of people that are working with the Bible that are not theists, that are not atheists. I know those are bad groups for me to get involved with if they're pretty staunch. They're philosophical groups or people that are more interested in the historicity and, where does this come from? What is accurate? Could they have actually been true? All of that. All of that goes on where I just go straight at the template. In reaching out to those people, I do find that there is this attitude in all of the groups. I'm a theist. You got the material wrong. I'm an atheist. You've got the material wrong. I am a scholar. You use the material the way you want to, or the people that are more concerned with, the who, what, where, when, and why. When there are templates that, to me, that seem to be there, how I got there to it being a life template is a long story I don't want to get into. If we take it there, what I can do is use that same life template and go to anybody's material and extract it. I get consistency. I don't say, here's a flood story, it means this. I go, here's a flood story, here's a flood story, here's a destruction of the world in a different way, or here is, the Nibiru comet coming around. There's a variety of ways that things are being destroyed, and it's not always the world. Sometimes it's a structure. Sometimes it's a person. And all of those eventually you realize are about, your own self. You're going back and interfacing with yourself. What I want to suggest is in more complicated games, and you would have to let me know this, but I'm thinking that they've become a lot more elaborate and a lot more difficult and a lot more, you're not so fixed to things. There's a free flow. But even within that free flow, you're going to have things in there that you go and do. You can't just do what you want to. You're going to be limited or, restricted to certain things within that framework. But that as you go from place to place, I'm wondering, is everything different, or do you see certain kind of patterns emerge, and even in the big complex games where this action is always this way, or this weapon is always used this way, or something somehow? And I believe in their culture that ultimately that would be a similar thing that we would see for different reasons, though, of course. The analogy here is I'm trying to find out where you get a brain structure that helps you see that. And I'm thinking, maybe that's it. What do you think? I'm theorizing. I'm still trying to figure this out. I know there's a lot of parallels, though. Back then, when I played one game, I thought, well, this is really cool. That not until you play a bunch of different games do you see the patterns. And it's the same thing here. You can study Greek myth, read some Homer. Odyssey is wonderful. If you just read the Bible, if you read Buddhism, you don't find the commonality. I couldn't figure out what to do, so I just kept studying all of them. It's kind of like, how do you see the patterns in the games? You play a bunch of different games. How do you see the patterns in the material? You play a bunch of material. It's exactly the same thing. And you begin to see things emergent that other people are incredibly intensely intelligent, wise, focused, knowledgeable about their region. I am not focused in anybody's region like that. I'm stepped back and saying, I see patterned things in these that are going on. I don't want to study the historicity or whether it's true or false or anything like that. It's a carrier. There's a template in there. When you see that, you go after the template. In this case, it's clever how they do it. It transitions. It starts out at the psyche, how the story is made. Let me make an example. One of the most pervasive teachings in here that you're going to find is cycles of pain, whether it's a boulder being rolled up and down a hill, a liver being eaten out, Pharaoh, plagues. They happen in the culture and they're bad, so it works as a perfect analog to hold the idea on the template that bad things are cycling. A wheel turning around, having painful childbirth every time you give pain, all of that stuff. Those are all the ideas of something painful going around. They're conceptual. They're not real. You have to look at it as something that is holding the idea of hurt, cyclical pain. Look, let's take a look and create a verse. I've done this one before, and I'll bring it up again here. It's a fun one. I'm going to create a verse, and we'll just take a look at it in isolation, but we'll handle it like we're going to interpret it as a spiritual verse. The verse is one I'm going to make up so that it doesn't have any baggage to it, and nobody can argue about what I have decided it means. I know I interpreted, I made it. The verse is, an anchored ship cannot sail. Standing alone, we don't know what that means. In a body of work, we're just going to take a look at it, like I said, and analyze it. If you read it literally, what does it mean? You put a ship in the water, throw the anchor out, it's not going anywhere. That's a literal reading. If, however, you know that it is not a literal teaching, that there's something nested in there, most people will go, yeah, that's metaphoric, it's about me. It's in this body of work that is this weird, bizarre stuff that somehow equates to me. And what this could mean is, or what it means to me is, when I'm hanging on to something, I cannot sail free. I'm hanging on to my past. I'm hanging on to my old job. I'm hanging on to old relationships. I'm hanging on to habits. I'm hanging on to things that are derogatory for me, and I can't free. And you would go, oh, that's wonderful, beautiful, I like it. But it's about the physical world. It's about their life now. There's another person that might come along and say, you got that completely backwards, 180 degrees out of phase. If you came from where I come from, you would know that I didn't have a mom and dad. I was abandoned. I was raised, in really bad ways. I didn't have friends. I didn't have family. I had no security. I floated the world with no rudder. Now that I'm anchored in port and I have family, I'm secure. My life is good. And you would look at that and go, huh, well, that sounds just as good. Who's right? They both made it about themselves. This is the level of interpretation that we get to in Christianity that creates 33,000 different denominations. People are making the verse about their physical life and saying this is how it must fit. And if they can't find a way to make it fit, they just slap flat ignore it. Okay, I got to be careful not to go down that path. We know that. So this is the layer 2 right here that we're looking at, where most of the world resides. There is something happening there. However, the core teaching means that the way it works is that I am the boat. I become the ship. I become the component part of that. It's written on my psyche, and what it very specifically means is that what I am hanging on to at the level of memory and the emotional way that I'm hanging on to it is what is going to continue to cycle around. I have to transition it that far to finally get to the consistent template. It has to be about the individual, and it has to be at the mind level. At that point, it is when everything begins to line up. And it's just different analogous terms. So an anchored ship cannot sail is a verse that will travel all over the place. If you want to change genres, you would say, you cycle around that which you cling to. The dog tied in the yard cannot escape. The tree that grows up and gets chopped down grows back again. All of those are showing a repetition of something that comes back. And sometimes it's linked with pain and sometimes not. It doesn't matter. In the spiritual realm, whatever we're holding on to, whatever is up here, continues to cycle around, good or bad. It doesn't matter what it is. We're generally not concerned with the good stuff. We just live life happy. It's the bad stuff that gets in the way of the happiness that we have to interact with in order to make the changes there. But at any rate, okay, so the point here was trying to cover what you were saying with respect to seeing the patterns and templates. And I'm thinking there's some kind of a mind structure that that you must have also looked at a number of different things. The only way you can see it is to be open to other material, and it becomes big. Oh, that's not true. That's finding it. I think people can see it if you find it yourself and show them, then they can see it. Finding it is what makes it. That's what I meant to say. You have to look at a lot of material to find it. Any concerns about doctor, PhD status and doing this kind of material here's what we need to consider is who wrote this, who developed this. 4,000, 5,000 years ago. It's in Hinduism. It's in Babylonian and Sumerian works. That's our earliest works that are some sort of a religious or spiritual in nature. The templates are there. I can find them there. What kind of PhDs and degrees did they have? They knew this because they observed. They learned it. They didn't sit down and get told what it is. They found it. And that's how you do it. I don't see people out there that are doing it. However, you went on to say, population control, and is it, the elites and whatnot. And you realize, if you think about it, if the template is everywhere, and it's even, I'll find it in, Islam and in the New Testament, the Roman works. The Romans used it prevalently. There's people in the background that are using this. Jesus being chosen, a chosen one, is the Son of God. Seeking the kingdom of heaven within is patterned like King Arthur, who is the chosen one because he's the only one who can extract Excalibur, and he's seeking the Holy Grail. Jesus travels with God, and King Arthur travels with Merlin. They both have supernatural aid along the way. The Romans know what is going on. Yeah, this is right there. What's the difference? I'm finding it and putting it in public, but you look at it and go, yeah, who knows this? There's people out there that know this, and they're keeping it quiet. So yeah, consider the implications of not having religion on this globe. But also, as I watch now, and we're getting closer to filling up our terrarium, we see that religion is just as quickly used to justify killing as it is to justify saving. Maybe that's not my balance. We can look out there and see that religion, depending on what it is, has different impacts. Buddhism is not about going and killing and, getting into that. Okay, this video was about my interest in what you said and me thinking, I wonder if people who have this capacity to do things where they're seeing those patterns in the background. And then finally we get here and it's just discovering the code to get to layer 3. That's when it suddenly stops looking outward and turns inward, and whatever verbiage they're using shifts. If I'm hungry in the physical world, I can be wanting to learn, hungry in the spiritual world. Fasting in the physical world, I don't eat. Fasting in the spiritual world, I got things quiet, shut down. But they'll just as quickly turn all over the place. You have to remember that they're just analogous terms. Naked in the physical world, standing in public, probably not a good thing. Naked in the spiritual world, standing in public means you've got nothing to hide. You've not covered with anything. Suddenly the analogs become different animals. We can't treat them as real words in any case. Even if somebody says, I need to fast or I need to eat, if it's in the spiritual world, it means I need to either shut things off in my mind or learn something. It's not about food. All right. That's what they're doing. It just gets more and more complicated. Remembering we've got our modern day biases. Imagine yourself, put yourself back there thousands of years ago without electricity. You live in a stone home. If there's a doorway, it's tattered cloth. We wear ragged clothes. We don't read. We don't write. There's no books. We tell stories. These are stories. What would we do? These would be our gaming platform as well as, well, the Taoists and the Buddhists handle it one way. The way that it's nested in Greek myth is more adventure. The way it is nested in Abrahamic religion is control. Yeah. They all have different vehicles. The ark that you're talking about that is carrying it, that's where the impact is on the population. And you can see which ones have the greatest impact based on what the requirements are and what they offer. Something that I noticed that other people have talked, and yeah, this is just a weird thing, but in reading through all kinds of religious material, I would note things in the beginnings of stories that sounded like they were repeats from the previous chapter. And at some point you're realizing today that these stories are traveling around individually. They're not consolidated in a book like this. You have to memorize them. You have to listen to them and memorize them. You're not memorizing the Holy Bible. You're memorizing stories. And the stories are not going to come around complete like that. You're going to hear Exodus by itself. You're going to hear the Odyssey by itself, or the Argonautica, or fill in the blank. You're going to hear that story by itself. So that story, if it's on the template, it's going to have to contain all of the elements necessary. So in the beginning, this is what some of the things that I was spotting. It's like there's some cycles going on. There's cause and effect. This because of that. Seeds out of itself. Something. So then, I had an electronics background. It's like, it looks like logic to me. It looks like digital logic in there. If-then statements. Yeah, a bunch of data gates. Seriously. It looked like that to me. Does that sound bizarre? Anyway. So I went after it like I was, chasing icy chips. How goofy is that? But you know what? This is where it got me. We have things that we can work with that we're using to find out what's going on, to decode what they have happening. Okay, that's all I had. I think that, I'm still trying to figure out those parts. As far as the template, I think I got a fairly good handle on that. The analogs from place to place get so whacked out that I focus in certain areas to learn the most. And, if the Bible is holding this template and the Mahabharata from Hindu are holding this template, they sound radically different from each other. So you have to learn how their analogs are. And boy, that's 3,500, 4,000 years ago. What were they doing? What were they thinking? What was life like? It's hard for us to get there. I'm throwing out different ideas. I'm still looking for confirmation from other humans that take the time to do it. I absolutely believe it's there. But I also believe it's very difficult to see, and it takes time to wire one's brain. You have to go after it. You have to keep going after it. And it finally begins to emerge. You figure it out. That's a part of the process. We grow into the understanding of it. But I think that certain life activities may create the mental structure necessary that just has to, we use the same structure for that as we do for this. It's a network. It is. It's a network. I almost forgot to address this. The pearls before the swine comment. Yeah, exactly. There's something in here you don't tell the masses. They want something different. The mental architecture is different. And the way they're going to act and the way that they will respond is different. It already is. Society's growing and getting bigger, and back when these were developed, it was probably necessary to figure this out and help people structure their lives. The Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, starts out with the destruction of our Tiamat, our early self, the representative of our early self. The hero is Marduk. Then after all of that is done, the past is destroyed. What do we do now? We don't just go along. Now we create a new self. So they're doing it in their culture by building mud, making mud bricks and creating ziggurats, big towers and things like that, big buildings, which represents on the template, what it represents is that what we are when we decide to go on the hero's journey because we want to change ourselves is that we have become a structure of thinking, of thought, of processes, of beliefs, and that they're giving that a name like a building or a tower, or it can be your world or your land or something like this belongs to you. Your life belongs to you, and you've lost it, and you must go back and get it because there's something bad happening there. But then on the other side, you emerge. You're doing something good to create a new life. And when we go on the path, we go wipe out our old selves, but we can't just say, I don't believe these things anymore. We have to instill new beliefs, new habits, new ideas. Now, instead of, going out drinking every night, I'm spending time meditating or hiking every night. I'm doing something different. I'm creating a new structure. I'm tearing down the old one and creating a new one all at the same time. And that is there to help the population at the same. They're living that. They're living that at the time. They're telling the stories. They're building it. They're seeing it. It's like, oh yeah, this is our life. It moves on to somebody else, and there's millions of, hundreds of thousands of them out of control. Give them some structure. Okay, now we must be this way. The analogs from Jewish are tough. I like working with them because they are simple to find in the hierarchy, in the mental hierarchy, because they're not made up. They're very much structured as higher being, male, female, offspring. And that that the male is in charge. This is the conscious in charge of the subconscious, and the offspring are there, but they're writing it in a very difficult way because it's hurtful to people. But it's a male patriarchal and mindset. That's kind of normal. So the analogs from the Hebrews are easy to understand, but horrific to use to me. There are other ones that are much more pleasant to use. Gods, other gods, sailing, are that kind of stuff. They're more pleasant, but they might be a little more difficult to unwrap because they're not familiar to you. You have to find the hierarchy, though. You'll find Zeus and lesser gods. Then you go to Christianity, and what do you find? God and sons of God and a bunch of angels and demons. They're all the parts are still there. Whatever does the good, the malevolent, all of the pieces and parts are there. They just give them different names. And some people say they're real, and they try to tone down what they are. Oh, it's not the crazy gods over there. That's ridiculous. What it really is the spirits of gods that are like humans or something. And to them, that's a big difference. To us, it's a different look on the gaming platform. Okay. Makes sense? Step on anybody's toes? I'm just saying what I see. I'm trying to describe it and understand it. That's all. All right. Love one another. See you in the next video.